Okay, welcome back to the next part of my Grand Tour video of the outer planets, kind of doing a Voyager style mission here, where I'm slinging out past Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, eventually working my way over to Neptune. In the last video, I was over at Uranus, and I time accelerated out away from Uranus until I could do the mid-course correction to head over to Neptune. And I decided that I would not record the 36 minutes of time acceleration. And it's actually probably good that I didn't, because it actually worked out that I was able to time warp all the way over where I'm now just 6 months away from my encounter at Neptune, and I didn't have to do a single additional mid-course correction. So if I had recorded all of that 36 minutes of time warp, you would have seen absolutely nothing. I didn't make a single change, except for one exception. I filled up my oxygen at one point during the trip. So that was the only thing you missed out on. Okay, let's get going then with our final part of the mission here. Again, I decided that Triton would be my destination when I get over to Neptune. And being that I'm only 6 months out, I should only have about maybe 3 minutes worth of time warp left before I close the distance. But let's get taking a look here at how things look now as compared to how they originally were when I left Uranus. So currently my encounter over here at Triton isn't set up very well. But I wouldn't expect it to be, because I didn't take the time to even attempt to get myself set up with Triton, because I knew that during that 6+ year time warp, whatever I set up would be all for naught. But now that I'm only 6 months out, it does make sense to begin planning the actual encounter with Triton. Now there are a couple of different options that I have, and I might explore one of the other options in an additional video. Maybe I'll come back to this part of the save point and then show a different method. But what I'm going to do for the main mission here is I'm going to do a single burn to encounter Triton. It's just a little bit easier. It will use a little more fuel, maybe about an additional 1,000 dV. I'm thinking that doing it this way is going to cost me roughly 7,000 dV when I encounter Triton, and if I did a 2-burn solution, I think it would be closer to 6,000. And that information is based on something that Dimitri showed me, so I'm using his benchmarks as my goalpost here. All right, let me turn maneuver mode on. And we'll update, and then I'll start by bumping the date forward to give me plenty of time to set this up. So instead of 26:33, I'm going to go all the way out to 27:33. That'll give me 14 minutes to set this all up, and that's close enough right there. Alright, so I'm just going to kind of start playing with the variables here and see what happens as I get out here to Triton. Okay, as I'm adding in some outward, that's bringing my trajectory in closer to Neptune, and I don't want that. What I want to do is I want to encounter Triton when I'm out here along the edge of the orbital altitude of Triton. So I'm going to put in a little bit of outward to start with that. And now bring the plane change in. And let's reset that for now. Let's take away some of the outward. In fact, let's reset it for now. And let's work with prograde for starters. This is the position of Triton. This is where TransX thinks Triton will be if I do that maneuver there. And what I'm trying to do is I want to arrive at Neptune when Triton is going to be at the same place as me. So I'm adding in a little bit of prograde here that'll speed up my journey just a little bit, and in so doing, that gets me closer to the position of Triton. So let's start with that, and I may have to reset this a few times and try a few different ideas, but we'll start with that. Now maybe bring in the outward. Okay, now I'll just keep refining the variables here. So far, that's a 40 meter per second burn, which is pretty low. Watching my closest approach there, you can see it's coming down as I'm bringing, my trajectory in here closer to where I can encounter Triton right at that point. I just want to make sure that's going to be a good time to encounter Triton, because if I encounter it at the wrong time, I'll have a really high encounter velocity. Looks like this is actually going to be the right time. I was playing around with this, I'll admit. I was playing around with this a little bit before I started recording, and I did find that if I had my trajectory come in here where it's slung in real close to Neptune, and then I encounter Triton down here, I found that my encounter velocity was, I want to say like 10 kilometers per second, so it's quite a bit higher. And the lower I can get that encounter velocity, the less fuel I'll have to use to actually get to actually do the insert around Triton. Alright, it's going the wrong way, so let's go negative here with the closest approach. So we're getting there. We're right there now by Triton. We probably have it. Yeah, we have it here. So let me look at the encounter. And so far we're saying this is going to be a 42 meter per second burn. Let me come through here and let me do an update real quick. And now let's back off the variables just a little bit so we can get the encounter view telling us what our minimum altitude is going to be and what our encounter velocity is going to be. Okay, so this says that the PE velocity is going to be 7,400. That's actually pretty good. That's better than what I was getting when I was playing with this off camera. Now you can figure that in order to orbit Triton, you're going to need over 1,000 meters per second. I don't know exactly what the orbital altitude, orbital velocity is off the top of my head, but it's a little bit less than the moon. The moon is 1,600 meters per second, roughly. So, in order to get to Triton and get in orbit, I'm just estimating that I can subtract 1,000 from this number. So instead of having a insert burn of 7,400 meters per second, I'm going to say my insert's going to be closer to 6,400. And I can actually take out some of the guesswork there. We can't actually set up a maneuver here, but Dimitri showed me how you can. What you have to do, I want to say it was auto plan off. Yeah, then plan none. So auto plan off, then plan none. Yeah, and that gives you access to maneuver. So we can turn maneuver mode on. And we can set our date according to this PEMJD, close to it. So 115975, we need to go forward. This version of TransX doesn't have the enter button, so you can't just type stuff in. You have to use plus and minus. So I'm setting the date to roughly this number. So 73, we're going to go 7340. Right there. And now we can come over to prograde, and we can put in the amount of negative prograde that we need to get captured. Captured and orbit insert. Let me also change to focus like that. That'll give me a better look. And yeah, we can see that it's costing us roughly 6,400 when we get over here to Triton in order to get our orbit established. Okay. That's just one way we can confirm that. But for now, I'm going to turn off that maneuver. And we're going to turn auto plan back on for now. So that's going to be the maneuver that we're going to do here. And it's going to cost me 42 meters per second. And I might need to refine that as I get in a little closer, because remember, I'm still 6 months out. But let's go ahead and do this maneuver. So that's going to be positive plane change. Positive prograde and positive. Okay, well, we have several variables there, but it looked to me like mainly
translation, rotation.
I'm just putting in a little bit of rotation. Now I'm going to 10x time warp to get closer to prograde. And I'll stop a little short because I had some outward in there as well. Okay, we'll go with that, and let's take a look now over here, and we can see where our X is at. So we need to bring it up a little bit. I'm trying to not use so much fuel in my rotations these days. I found, you know, something kind of obvious, but you don't do it unless you're thinking about it. When you want to rotate a lot, you can rotate just as quickly by putting in one tap of rotation and then going to 10x time acceleration. That's just as fast as using a lot of rotation and then a lot of kill rotation. And by putting in one tap and then using 10x of time warp, you don't use nearly as much fuel as you would if you just held down, you know, 3 to yaw your vessel and then used a bunch of kill rotate. So that's just something that I'm trying to become more conscientious of. Over to maneuver, I'm going to go ahead, and even though it doesn't really matter, I'm going to go ahead and set the date forward by just a little bit. Actually, I have another idea on that. Something else Dimitri showed me. Once you get your vessel, once you get your maneuver set up and you get your vessel oriented to that position, what you can do is you can actually turn maneuver mode off and then do the burn manually. But I'm actually going to go ahead and do the burn according to view target. I'll explain that other thing some other time. Actually, no. I'll go ahead and do it here. So I know I'm facing the right way because I've already got the maneuver set up and I have the vessel oriented according to view target. So now instead of burning according to what I see here, what I can do is come over to maneuver mode and turn maneuver mode off, and now I can just burn because I know I'm facing the right way, and now I just burn and watch the encounter.
Translation.
And there we have it. Something about like that. Maybe even a little lower, about like that. Another alternative there would be to go ahead and do the burn while watching view target until you get all the way down to maybe 5 delta V left, and then turn maneuver mode off, and then watch view encounter to get that last little bit. And the reason for doing that is just for the fact that when you do the burn according to having maneuver mode on, you don't see the encounter update in real time until you turn maneuver mode off. So you can actually maybe get a little bit more accuracy if you get the vessel all lined up, then turn maneuver mode off and do the burn while watching the encounter view.
Rotation. Alright,
killing rotate, and now I'm going to warp time forward and just watch the encounter view, see how things change. And it looks like currently trajectory is coming in closer to Triton, so I'll just keep that in mind. And I suspect it may go in and out. But we have to go all the way to November. So let's at least go halfway. Yeah, you can see now it's coming back out. Now it's going back in, so it may oscillate. Okay, now our stages have updated. And let's just take a look at what we have here, because obviously things changed here dramatically. So let's just see if we want to think about updating. It looks like that's going to be okay. It's coming down. Okay, it's still oscillating. Let me just think about it for a moment. Okay, May, June, July. So maybe toward the end of August. We'll do another mid-course. Actually, I think I'll do it now because I was watching here and I noticed that the closest approach reached a point where it topped out and now it's going back the other way, and I think that might actually be a good time to do another mid-course. So let me go over here to maneuver, and we'll turn maneuver mode on because right now we're not seeing anything here in encounter, so we definitely want to do a maneuver. And we'll update. And I don't know which variable I need, so I'm just going to start with prograde and see what does what. Okay, that's not helping. And that's not helping, so let's reset that. And let's try some outward. That's going the wrong way. Alright, outward is helping, so we need a little bit of negative outward, or we need some inward. And I suspect a little bit of plane change. And maybe not. So let's go back over to outward. And I'm going to shoot for 20 kilometers. Do another update. Sorry, out to 29, so I'm definitely going to set the date here. And let's bump it forward so we have time to maneuver, or time to rotate. And I think that'll work. Now let's get the vessel rotated where we need to be.
Translation rotation.
And we were doing negative outward. So we need to be on the center line here and then a little bit off to the left. check something here. Okay, I'm already... Reference Neptune. Excuse me for just one moment. Okay, negative outward. I don't understand why this is wanting me apparently to put in some plane change.
Translation. Rotation.
And I realize I'm past the time to do the burn, but I'll update everything here in a moment. Just want to get rotated first. And what direction does the HUD say I'm facing? Weird. So this must be relative to Neptune then. Let me double check that, I'm just curious. Let me copy that information to the HUD. Yeah. So now my burns are relative to Neptune, that explains it. Even though Neptune isn't the strongest gravitational influence. Okay, the world makes sense again. Alright, let's VW over to maneuver, and I need to update. You can see how quickly things change when you get closer to these bodies. And now I'm going to reset the date. And now I'm going to do what I did before. I'm going to come over here to
Translation. Rotation.
view target. And now that I know I'm facing the right direction, I'm just going to turn maneuver mode off.
Translation.
And I'm just going to do that little bit of translating that needs to be done in order to get here lined up according to view encounter. Actually, let me just watch the minimum altitude for a moment. Okay, it's going up at the moment. So that would mean, technically, if I put the orbit trajectory below the surface, then it would continue to climb, but it may continue to oscillate. So let me just go with 80 kilometers for now, and then we'll
Rotation.
kill rotate, time warp in a little bit, and see what happens.
Translation.
Just doing a little bit of correction here while watching view encounter. And these are all control thrusts at the moment, so very, very minimal amounts of correction here. Alright,
Rotation.
kill rotate.
Translation.
And we have a ways to go yet. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and time warp to the end of August, and hopefully this will just oscillate for a while rather than sitting here making continual corrections. Yeah, it looks like that's going to be the case. And actually, as long as it continues to oscillate, I'll just keep going forward out to September, October. It's only if the closest approach suddenly, continues to go in one single direction, then I'll obviously have to make a correction. But if it's just bouncing back and forth like this, then there's no need to correct, I don't think. Not until I get in close, obviously. Once I get in really close, then I'll have to refine it so I actually hit the target that I want to hit. So now we're at September. And let me just double check the date. We're saying we're going to encounter Triton, I guess this date. So let's check that here with Orbiter's handy dandy converter. 116157. Yeah, November 26th, so nothing's changed. Alright, continue forward at 100,000. So about 60 days to go. And I'm going to come out of time warp now just for one moment. About 30 days out, I'm going to Control S just to save right here at this point and continue on. Double check the locks. We're good. Okay, we're getting pretty close now. A couple weeks out. In fact, let's take a look outside. Okay, there we go. There's Neptune and its moons. Triton's our target. So let's warp time in. Watching the closest approach. See if it's going to oscillate back down, and it is. And once it bottoms out, then I'm going to do another mid-course here. Because we're just a few days out. There it is. Alright, and I'm not even going to turn maneuver mode on at this point.
Rotation, translation.
Because we'll just use a little bit of control thrust. Okay, that's a little bit of 2, so that's basically some plane change. And that's about as low as it's going to get with just that one. Now I'm doing a little bit of reverse. So this is 9. So we're slowing things down just a little bit. Looks like that one's going to get us the rest of the way there. Okay, now we'll just time warp in carefully. About 10 days out. Yeah, you can see what's happening basically as I guess we're getting obviously gravitational influence from some of the other moons. As Triton goes around, you know, it's having an impact here. So, okay, we're 4 days out. Let's go ahead and translate. Okay, again, this is 2. And again, that's 9. Okay, let's start there. Let's go forward a little more. Let's take a look outside real quick. And that's going down at the moment. Now we're below the surface. That's a crash course. But I believe as we come around to the other side, it's going to start climbing. Okay, now we're about a day out. So let's fix our course here a little bit. This is a little bit of 1, which would be just a little bit of outward, and a little bit of 6. Just to make sure that I'm not going to actually crash. And I think we're gaining altitude according to TransX at the moment. Yeah, so I'm just going to put it right there at the surface and go forward. And here in a moment, I'll set up my next maneuver for the actual capture / orbit insert. Let's get a little closer first. Let's also take a look at orbit MFD so we can kind of see where we're at. Another look outside. Go forward at 100,000. Watching the minimum altitude. And this is our orbital path. We're going to eventually come down this green line here. Here we are. Okay, we're getting pretty close. Okay, that's saying 50 kilometers. I don't really want to be quite that high, so
Rotation translation.
let me just do a little bit of translation here. I believe 9 was helping us come down, yeah. Alright, now let me actually Control S just in case some catastrophe happens. Actually, this video might be getting a little long, so now that we're here, we're at Neptune and we're not far from Triton. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video here at this point. And I think this will make for a good section to cut. And I'm going to just continue recording right away. So if you like this part of the video, go ahead and leave a comment down below. And I will see you in the next part. Single change. Except for one exception, I filled up my oxygen at one point during the trip. So that was the only thing you missed out on. Okay, let's get going then with our final part of the mission here. Again, I decided that Triton would be my destination when I get over to Neptune. And being that I'm only 6 months out, I should only have about maybe 3 minutes worth of time warp left before I close the distance. But let's get taking a look here at how things look now as compared to how they originally were when I left Uranus. So currently my encounter over here at Triton isn't set up very well, but I wouldn't expect it to be because I didn't take the time to even attempt to get myself set up with Triton, because I knew that during that, something that Dimitri showed me, so I'm using his benchmarks as my goalpost here. Alright, let me turn maneuver mode on, and we'll update, and then I'll start by bumping the date forward to give me plenty of time to set this up. So instead of 26:33, I'm going to go all the way out to 27:33. That'll give me 14 minutes to set this all up. And that's close enough right there. Alright, so I'm just going to kind of start playing with the variables here and see what happens as I get out here to Triton. Okay, as I'm adding in some out 6+ year time warp, whatever I set up would be all for naught. But now that I'm only 6 months out, it does make sense to begin planning the actual encounter with Triton. Now there are a couple of different options that I have, and I might explore one of the other options in an additional video. Maybe I'll come back to this part of the save point and then show a different method. But what I'm going to do for the main mission here is I'm going to do a single burn to encounter Triton. It's just a little bit easier. It will use a little more fuel, maybe about an additional 1000 DV. I'm thinking that doing it this way is going to cost me roughly 7,000 DV when I encounter Triton, and if I did a 2-burn solution, I think it would be closer to 6,000. And that information is based on... Okay, welcome back to the next part of my Grand Tour video of the outer planets, kind of doing a Voyager style mission here, where I'm slinging out past Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, eventually working my way over to Neptune. In the last video, I was over at Uranus, and I time accelerated out away from Uranus until I could do the mid-course correction to head over to Neptune. And I decided that I would not record the 36 minutes of time acceleration. And it's actually probably good that I didn't, because it actually worked out that I was able to time warp all the way over where I'm now just 6 months away from my encounter at Neptune, and I didn't have to do a single additional mid-course correction. So if I had recorded all of that 36 minutes of time warp, you would have seen absolutely nothing. I didn't make a single word. That's bringing my trajectory in closer to Neptune, and I don't want that. What I want to do is I want to encounter Triton when I'm out here along the edge of the orbital altitude of Triton. So I'm going to put in a little bit of outward to start with that. And now bring the plane change in. And let's reset that for now. Let's take away some of the outward. In fact, let's reset it for now. And let's work with prograde for starters.